Hello and welcome to this market update with me, Andrew Dawkins, and
myself, Rachel Blackhall.
Good to have you with us. So the month in question this time is September.
Yes, so there's been a lot in the press this month about economies and the mini budget. Do you want to explain what's going on in the world of investments then?
Yeah, well, I think once again it's all about the financial consequences of COVID, locking the world down for 2 years, and then the world wanted to spend. And of course, when you get too much demand, too little supply, it creates inflation, which should have been foreseen by the major banking head people like Andrew Bailey over here with the Bank of England and Jerome Powell, who's in charge of the Federal Reserve in America, really not acting quick enough last year to control the big rise in commodity and future prices that we were seeing last year. So September, a lot of people were expecting inflation rates, especially in the States, to fall, and we were perhaps going to see an easing then in the need for the central banks to put up interest rates. However, as often happens in the wonderful world of investments, the opposite happened, and interest rates rose substantially in the US and again here in the UK. And over in Germany, we saw inflation of over 10%, which we've not seen for decades. And the biggest rise for inflation in Germany in September was food prices, which had gone up hugely. So that caused real challenges. And then the central bank, led by the Federal Reserve in America, put up interest rates by 0.75%, followed then by the European Central Bank, which put up rates similarly. And then the Bank of England, their meeting was postponed because of the death of the Queen. They regrouped and decided to put up interest rates by just 0.5%. And this sort of caused a little bit of pressure on the pound because people in the investment market are going, oh, well, if the American interest rate is so much, the UK interest rate is below that. Tell you what, we'll move our money into dollars rather than into pounds. So the pound came under pressure. But then we had the mini budget, and that really, the big difficulty with that one, not so much the announcements that were made for growth, but more the fact that these spending pledges hadn't been costed. So they were coming away and saying, like, it's a giveaway budget, we're reducing taxes, we're doing the big financial stimulus measures at a time when most of the world is actually cutting back. Now, that would have been fine if they could have said, well, we've got the figures here just to confirm why we're making these changes and the impact it's going to have, but they weren't reported on. So the markets went into a little bit of a frenzy, and the pound slipped even further against most major currencies.
So one of the implications that the rising interest rates can cause is that eventually that will feed through to consumer demand and consumer spending. An example of this would be Apple, one of the biggest phone manufacturers in the world. And as many of you know, we've said this before, we indirectly hold shares in Apple through the funds in our investment portfolios. And what we've seen recently is the launch of their iPhone 14. So the sales figures have not been as high as expected. And that sort of shows you that people are cutting back on their spending with things taking into account things like their mortgages and cost of living, and thinking twice about spending, say, $1,000 on a new phone when the current phone that they have can just do the same job. With interest rates rising, is there any positive impact of that in the world of investments?
Well, you would think that with rising interest rates, the fixed interest sector that's lending money to companies here in the UK and overseas and lending money to the UK government would actually start to show positive yields. Unfortunately, the major funds are still repositioning, so still holding a lot of assets that were bought a number of years ago when inflation was benign. So we're not seeing a positive impact, unfortunately, from the fixed interest sector. Rising dollar strength makes it more expensive for us here importing goods into this country, but it does have a beneficial effect for the FTSE 100 companies. 80% of those or thereabouts secure more of their income overseas than they do in the UK. So actually a falling sterling rate is actually beneficial for them because they get more pounds for the dollar when they're bringing it back to the UK, for example. The FTSE 250, the next tranche down on the list, they actually only export around about 40% of goods manufactured and services consumed go overseas. So therefore the FTSE 250 index has been badly hit, as indeed most smaller companies markets have, both here in the UK, Europe and the US. So I don't think there are many winners to rising interest rates. Fortunately, here in the UK, those people with mortgages, 80% of them or thereabouts are on fixed rates, and just 25% of those are on 2-year fixed rates. So a lot of people will be getting shelter from the fact that they've fixed the mortgage costs, plus the fact that property prices have increased substantially in the last 24 months. So there's a lot more equity within property values than there was before. So that can be a bit of a buffer as well.
So what should we do then? What's your advice?
Make a cup of tea. Yes. On the investment side of things, nothing's needed to be done at all at the moment. It's time to be strong. I know we've said that for most of this year. We do get years like this is probably going to be, I would imagine, unless things dramatically improve, our worst year for performance since 2008-9. It's the same for all over the world. So it's not just the UK. It's not just our portfolios. It's every fund manager out there scratching their heads and wondering what's going to happen next. So the dramatic effects of COVID and a war in Europe really is not helping at all. And to have two of these major incidents within the same time period is phenomenally unlucky. So dig deep, remain invested. The returns still for 3, 5 and 10 years are spectacular. So I think all of our equity portfolios over 10 years have more than doubled in value, as we'll come to in a minute. So it's the long term that we specialize in. Short term, we get times like this, but it's where the profits for tomorrow are created. And being invested, being fully invested, means that once the recovery comes, and it can come very, very quickly, then you're in it and you win. So unfortunately, the fixed interest assets, though, were always regarded as the low risk assets, and now probably high risk assets. So it's a change in financial direction and financial planning that we've incorporated for the last 3 years now. And we just need to continue to monitor, which is what
we do. Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. We understand that these periods of volatility can cause some concern. But as Andrew said, sit tight. We are doing all we can at this end. We continue to monitor all of the investment funds within the portfolio and externally. We did complete a task just recently where we reviewed all the funds, and that's where again we're finding out that it's not just the funds that are in our portfolio that are suffering. It's everyone out there. So we've reviewed them all. We've decided to make one small change, which anybody who's affected will be notified of probably this week or next. So please do just sit tight and hopefully put your trust in us that we are doing all we can to manage this for you.
Finally, to the portfolio performance. This is where we go through the figures for the last 1 month, 3 years, 5 years and 10 years. So we start off with the defensive portfolio.
So the defensive portfolio is down 6.25% over the 1 month. Over 3 years, that is down 5.09%. Over 5 years, we're starting to hit positive territory again and up 8.12%. Over 10 years, the growth rate of 73.14%.
And the cautious portfolio.
The cautious portfolio over the last 1 month was down 6.10%. Over 3 years, showing a positive return of 2.03%. Over 5 years, a positive return of 18.72%. And over 10 years, 110.54%.
And the balanced portfolio?
The balanced portfolio is down 6.81% this last 1 month. It is up 7.69% over 3 years and up 27.93% over 5 years and up 156.47% over 10 years.
Our capital growth portfolio?
The capital growth portfolio is down 6.56% over the last 1 month and a positive return of 10.40% over 3 years and up 33.54% over 5 years, and over 10 years has provided a return of 194.07%.
And finally, our aggressive portfolio.
And aggressive portfolio is down 6.78% over the last 1 month. And the positive returns over 3 years are 17.03%, over 5 years 42.13%, and over 10 years 234.28%.
Thank you very much. And that ends the market update for the month of September. Thank you very much for listening and tuning in, and we'll look forward to hopefully better news
soon
this time next year.